everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host. My name is Marcia Trajano, and with me is my dear friend, Anne Sinclair. We're speaking from the US and from the UK today. So it's good to be together when we're so far away, right, Anne?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about uh, a group of individual experts. They're called health psychologists. They study and the factors that allow people to be healthy and recover from an illness or be able to cope with a chronic condition. These experts, they work in the intersection of health on one end and behavior science, right? Those behaviors that we have, and those studies are really a part of the integrated healthcare delivery. And I just have to say, the path to wellness is not simple. It's indeed very complex. So, everyone out here with us today, I just want to let you know that this discussion is an invitation for all of us to be ready for this exploration on health promotion as well as illness prevention. But before we start our conversation, I would like to introduce the program to those who have not heard it before. So, if this is the first time you're watching this podcast, please note that our program, Psychology and Spirituality Weekly Talks, are based on the works by Joanna de Angelis, among other experts and authors that we often reference to. It offers a space that is safe so that we can confront, compare, correlate, and expand our spirituality concepts now from a psychological lens, bringing to all of us insights, actionable tips, and some advice if appropriate, so that all of us are able to lead a better life. Please note this program is sponsored by the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, the TV Mansão do Caminho, and AMI Brazil. So, love to hear from you. So please make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. And if you'd like to know more or check out other channels, you can do it at spiritist.us. And indeed, love to hear your feedback, your questions, or any critique. What are we missing? What would you like to hear in the future? Please do use the chat window to do so. But and I read this interesting article, and it's published by the American Psychological Association on health psychology and how this field of study examines specifically the influence of biological, social, and psychological factors that influence both our health as well as our illnesses. So I just wanted to do this, and let's use today's podcast to talk about psychology and how it can help us prevent being ill, right? They also help us improve our health and indeed promote our well-being. So, Anne, I have a question for you. What is the goal of psychotherapy? Or better yet, what could we say is the goal of for anyone undergoing psychotherapy from this spiritual lens? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so yeah, thank you for that question. I think that the what we're taking here is the view from a spiritual lens. That's really important. That we consider ourselves, our human as human beings, not just this physical body, but also that we are energy, which is our spirit, who moves this body, who survives after the body dies and carries on and lives again, takes on another body, and so on. And in between, according to the spiritist tradition and to many others, there is also an energy body that's almost like a double of our physical body. So there's a big interaction. We are like a complex. So if we think of our physical body, it's already a massive complex of cells and nerves and all kinds of things going on. bacteria living in our guts that we never even knew about, that are doing all kinds of weird and wonderful things that keep us healthy. To be honest, we know quite a few things about our bodies in terms of our progress, but I think there's probably more that is unknown at this point as we go
Right.
discovering new things.
Yeah.
And when we think about our health, it's about thinking, well, what is health and what is disease? And we come from a past of a very materialistic approach, so that if something physical happens to our body, it might have been considered a disaster, a drama. It might have really meant that we could no longer fend for ourselves or feed ourselves, and it could lead to our death. So it's no simple matter. There is a reason for that. But we are taking a step more into the future, where we are considering our health from our spiritual perspective as well. So, as the learned friends from the psychologist group was saying, we have to think that there is an interaction between our body and our mind, if you like, that our thoughts and our emotions affect our health, and also the environmental effects affect our mental well-being and our emotions. So it's coming and going both ways. So when we're thinking about psychotherapy, it's a very useful tool to help us in our emotional and mental well-being. And the thing that we are reminded of is that the psychotherapists, they can help us to see our problems from a different perspective. They can suggest methods, and they can demystify those things that seem frightening to us and help us to look at those scary things, but they can't do the job for us. We need to do the work.
Yeah.
So they can help us, they can show us and give us tools, but we are the ones who need to get to know ourselves, to understand what our thought processes are, our emotions, and not to be angry or judgmental with them, but to embrace it, say, okay, this is me, this is where I'm at, and I think like this, or I react in that way, and this actually can make me ill.
Yeah.
And that is very healthy,
Hmm.
but it's not the health in the way of traditional thinking. Oh, I can, if I'm sick, I'll just go and get some pills, take them, and I'll be fine. Well, you can actually do that, but it's not necessarily helpful. It might be at the moment, but where is the root of what's happened to you? Why are you confronted with this situation? And not want to just go on too long, in case I know you have other questions, but what this leads to is, what does an illness or a problem with our bodies actually mean to us? And some people, from a spiritual perspective, they'll say, oh, let's say you've had a cancer come up. Oh, that could be bad karma, might be from a past life, could be. Or it might be your bad thoughts and your immune system got repressed and now you've developed a cancer, could be. Or it
Hmm.
might be none of the above. It might be that this cancer has come as a lesson that's come to teach us something. So rather than being sort of agitated about it and blaming ourselves or blaming others, it's just thinking, okay, I've got this now. What has this come to teach me? What can I learn? How can I progress? And what can I do with it? It's just having a different relationship
Can I
with it.
can I give an example for a somebody that I know very close to me, and this person does not live in the U.S., so I only maybe see once a year, if that. And it was with rather shock that I found out that this person was planning his suicide for the past 5 years,
Oh my gosh.
right? And so you can see some ideation that could be quite difficult for his family, right? And but that was something that was present to the point that is, when I get to this point, I'm going to buy this, and at this point, I'm going to buy that, and it just everything well planned. Well, in this person's timeline, it was time, or getting close to the time. and cancer struck, violent cancer. And I have to say that it's this flip side.
Mm.
Now that health, physical health is no longer available, this person is turning to be much foot from photographs, right? Much happier, and the focus has changed completely from no longer living, but actually wanting, desiring, and doing everything possible to live. And I thought, it's just something that is really worthy of our attention and even quite exemplary for this discussion that we're having, right? And
Mm.
you provide the example of cancer, and it's just exactly that. How sometimes you feel that your body's betraying you, and you have all those difficulties, and your body's become vulnerable with treatment, etc., etc. But within that physical reaction, then it may, right? It may come that moment of waking up to the fact that health, real health, that integrated health is not just physical, but it's emotional, it's social, it is spiritual as well.
Yeah, and I think that that is such a good example. I remember I once went
Mhm.
with a relative when they went to receive a diagnosis of cancer. And when they got the diagnosis, it was stage 4, there was metastases. And so the patient asked, obviously, what everybody else, how long do I have, doctor?
Yeah, yeah,
And the doctor said, the rule of three.
yeah.
The rule
Okay.
of three goes like this. He says, okay, I will offer you some chemotherapy, but of the patients that I give this news to at this stage of advanced cancer, 1/3 will die within the first 3 months. 1/3 will live as long as I suggest, 1 or 2 years, and 1/3 will live way longer than that. What makes the difference between each one of these groups? He said, is how you face it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
some people, it says, you give them a diagnosis, they're out of here. They literally stop fighting. You know, they want to die. They might even not realize that, but just their fear, their despair, all kinds of things just means that their immune system is even more vulnerable, and they end up, shortening their
yeah,
days. Other
yeah.
people will do what is expected. So they will survive 2 years because that is what the doctor told them their survival will be. And
Mhm.
other people, they said, no, I will carry on. I will do my
Yeah,
own thing. I've got things to do, places to be. Yeah, I have cancer. I'll have my chemo. I'll carry on. But you're not telling me when I'm dying. And it's really interesting. And I mean, no disrespect to anyone, but just showing how the same diagnosis can affect people in a different way, and people can have different outcomes. And all I can say is that each person's journey through disease is a very individual and personal journey. It's not for anybody to be telling them what they need to do or should do or shouldn't do. It's up to them, because they can explore, they can ask for help, they can ask for psychotherapy, they can change their diet, their lifestyle. They can go inside and say, okay, what's happening to me, what's important for me in life. But the thing
absolutely.
to
Yeah,
consider is, even if you have a disease, and there is always something you can do to
yeah,
make a difference to others. And if you make an effort to make a difference to others, it helps you to take the focus away from your inner pain, from your suffering, to try and do something good for others. And that immediately makes you feel better.
yeah. So just to summarize, right? First of all, we discussed the fact that when we talk about health, we're talking about health of your energy source, your spirit, right? The essence of who we are as immortal beings, the health of your in between bodies, right? And
Mm.
then the health of your physical body. And I love when we talk about this triad, if you will, we should also can also think in terms of body, mind, and spirit,
Mm.
or you can talk about physical, emotional, mental, right? There's many ways that you can break down that, but it's not just the one aspect of who we are that needs to be healthy. So that's number one. The second is that, and I love what you said, the balance between being healthy, say, when facing, confronting a terminal disease, and this is just an example, it is, do you accept it and make that your destiny, or do you fight for it? So that relationship between your mental state, right, your thoughts and your action versus what is it is expressed in your body, what is somatized, uh, can be very different, right? Yes, I
Mhm.
have this uh, disease now, but how does it reflect? What are my opportunities to really look into this opportunity and heal other wounds that are not in the body, perhaps.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And sometimes those wounds are like, feelings of not being adequate, not being
Hmm.
loved, not being able to love, all kinds of things that in a healthy person who appears to have a healthy body, they might have all these troubles hidden.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah,
And sometimes when your body becomes ill, it's like an opportunity to look holistically
yes,
and to free yourself perhaps from thought patterns that are not serving you anymore. Uh,
yeah.
and I remember that there's a book, I can't remember what it's called now, but
Uh,
a gentleman has a heart attack.
hmm.
And this heart attack means that then he's forced to leave his high powered job, uh,
Uh-huh.
and he has to change his life because he's now in
Yeah,
hospital for a while, and then he has to have surgery, all kinds of things. And he goes on and he says he would never have been able to leave that lifestyle if he hadn't had the heart attack. So,
absolutely.
although the heart attack was a drama, devastating for him, for his family, the result of it was that he made choices that led to a healthier, inverted commas, like holistically healthier
Yeah,
life going forwards. And he had that insight to say, actually, I was blessed to have this heart attack, because if not, I would just carry on and I would have wasted the rest of my life.
yeah. And we
Just,
can even say, and that some disease, heart attack or otherwise, that puts you to a healthier, right, lifestyle that you would never have attained otherwise. But then there are those that, because of, uh, let's say, it's purely fiction, but heart attack or the disease, the event moves you to, okay, I cannot, it's unsustainable to keep my life as I've been living.
mhm,
But then that triggers something quite magical, which is I'm now thinking not for a material existence, but what is my quote unquote mission in life? What do I want to do? Which is feed your soul, right? I know somebody like this person who is an example to me, high powered executive, making a lot of money, right? And similar,
mm,
and then he went to an and to a nonprofit, right? A nonprofit organization that was a little tiny nonprofit, and because everything is done by volunteers, the span was quite small, right? And he transformed with all of his background that was very corporate like into an enormously impactful nonprofit organization globally.
wow.
And he's quite an inspiration whenever I hear about him and how that nonprofit organization is doing, and it's everywhere. During Ebola, right?
Mm,
Um, what can we call it? Ebola outburst, right?
yeah.
Uh, he in this little tiny organization at the time was critical into addressing Ebola globally.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking maybe he needed to go through that high power job to learn, but then it comes a time when it's if you believe in that, right? Okay, so and so, time to get off that. Let's go to another another path because you have this mission. So this is how I'm thinking that maybe we can also talk about that. But I think you and I were thinking right, very much the same because I had a question for you, right? And it is, what would be the true impact for anyone when we talk about your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors, when we're dealing with or trying to overcome psychological, moral, and social pressures. What do you think? Because you start in that path, what is it that we need to look at in terms of the impact? And you mentioned for this case of this man with a heart attack, right? If
Mm.
he or she recognized this, that he could not, I'm saying he generically, he could not sustain in that other job. Now he's looking for health and well-being. But what else is there? What are the other impacts, if you think?
I think that one of the things that the spirit Joanna de Angelis calls our attention to is
Mm,
that sometimes when we become ill or we're going towards an illness, we might be stuck in a way of thinking. And sometimes what she said, we need to learn to free ourselves. So
yeah.
the way of thinking might be one of victimhood or
Yes.
blame or
Yeah.
things like that,
Yeah.
and to discover, on the other hand, that we are not victims. We are eternal human beings going through
Uh-huh.
an experience on planet Earth, uh,
Yeah.
amongst infinite experiences that have gone before, that will happen in the future, but also that we have immense potential
Uh-huh.
that we have forgotten, that is hidden from us because we become almost like fixated in certain thought patterns. And that is where things like psychotherapy can be really useful to help us to open our eyes and to face and to look at things from a different perspective. But some people can do this on their own without psychotherapy. It just
Yeah.
depends on individuals. So it is about remembering that
Uh-huh.
we are much more, that we have much more potential than we allow ourselves even to think about, but also to realize that the thoughts that we are having, these these are driving what's happening in our body. I mean, nowadays psychosomatic disease, it's well accepted because it's so demonstrable. And
Yeah.
even things like our immune system. Well, thanks to the AIDS epidemic that we get to know our immune system, isn't it? Because before
Correct.
that, it was poorly understood. I'm
Yeah.
from the generation who had their tonsils taken out because they're useless. They have no point. Oops, they're part of the immune system. But that's how it was in the
Yeah.
1960s. They
Yeah.
said, oh,
Yeah.
it's something useless. The appendix, something useless. No, it's part of the immune system. So
Let's chop
anyway,
it off, right? Let's chop it off. Take it out.
yeah, because I don't know what it means. It's useless. No, let's check it out.
Yeah.
But going back to the immune system, some of the
Uh,
things that they've discovered about the immune system is it's very reactive to our mood, our state. So, a depressive state, a state of sadness, of fear. Our immune system is sort of dampened down, and we become much more vulnerable to infections and diseases. While if we are in a state of optimism, of joy, of happiness, so we could be, let's say, have an illness, but be practicing gratitude and joy and optimism. That means that our immune system, becomes healthier and stronger. So then that means that potentially we are protecting ourselves against other potential invasions and situations. And it's thinking about the how our mind. So it's not a fantasy or woo woo. It is biology that
yes.
our state, our thoughts, our mental states, our emotions affect how our body functions and our hormones and our immune system in particular. If you think of something like cancer as well, okay, we all have cancerous cells bobbing around in our body all the time. Yeah, they're there. They're fine. And our immune system is getting rid of them, sweeping them away as they do with everything else that's Okay, this bacteria, this virus, this cancer cell
Correct.
is
Mm.
getting rid of everything normally, and we're just going along. So, but then to generate, develop a cancerous tumor or a cancer, but something changes in that balance in which it takes control and is allowed to grow and fester. And that also is going back to thinking what thoughts are we feeding our body,
Correct. Correct.
isn't
Yeah.
it? Because we
And
choose our foods and say, oh, I want to do nutritional, choose only good foods, clean foods, all this kind of thing. But what about your thoughts? They're
yes.
also feeding your body. Are they clean thoughts? Like making the analogy, and also thinking about your service to society and to others. This
Yeah.
is something that really helps us in our sense of self-worth,
Yeah. Yeah. I,
validates our existence in society.
yes. You're talking now, and two things that came to my mind. Number one was the idea that the person who speaks the fastest
Mm.
can speak 300 words per minute.
Wow.
Right, so but don't you've heard like in auction houses,
Oh
etc.,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and they just go fast fast fast. 300, that's the fastest a human being can utter words, and yet they say we can think 3,000 thoughts
Wow.
a minute, a minute, just like what we see, right? When we look at things, we can, there's so much that your mind has to be selective, otherwise you go crazy. There's too many details to capture, and that's why I don't know if you read about Daniel Kahneman, where in his book, right, thinking fast and slow, he's bringing to us the sense that we need to slow down,
Mm.
to be aware of our thoughts, just like what you're saying. But the other insight that came to my mind as you were speaking was the fact that, like you mentioned, those emotions, state of emotions of sadness, even depression, or versus joyful and contentment. On one hand, they can help us cope and help our immune system. I'm thinking that stress,
Mm.
right? If unaware, right? If you live stressed due to work or even going to burnout, you may not even be aware of it, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that in the sense of attaining our self-compassion, our self-awareness, our consciousness, we also need to look at us with love and start to revisit, reflect upon our lives, and say this is unsustainable. This stress is killing me, if you will.
Mm.
Let me change that. So it's important because it's very pervasive. This unaware lack of awareness, if you will, for where we are and what we're doing to mitigate and achieve our well-being.
Yeah, and if you think about like the way society is sort of constructed nowadays, the
Mhm.
very competitive environment that
Yes.
you need to be competing all the time for the job, for the
Yeah.
house, for the relationship, for the money, for the this, for the that. It's a constant state of competition that it's
Yes.
almost like it feeds itself, and you get into it's like a hamster wheel. You get into "Woo," and you don't even realize, like you said, you're in that stress and you don't even see it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's difficult to step off and have that look. I
Yeah.
mean, the spirits do suggest, and like not only them but others, that sometimes to develop a practice of stopping maybe every day for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Can you spare 5 minutes or 10 minutes just to sit quietly and meditate? Which meditates means to just be silent and just
Yeah.
breathe and be there for 5 or 10 minutes. Just put your timer on or whatever, and just say, check in with yourself. How am I doing? Am I okay? And sometimes it's really hard because you have expectations from your parents, from society, from your teachers, from your employees, from your employers. I mean, from your neighbors, from everybody. What's everybody expecting of you? And you end up thinking you're not good enough. You haven't got,
Yeah,
because you feel exhausted, and how are you going to do this? And it starts building these senses of lack of self-esteem and saying, well, I'm just not
absolutely.
cut out for it. I'm not good enough. And then processes of disease can be installed, because so that's thinking about the environment and all those relationships around us that can be affecting us, undermining our self-love and our self-worth.
Mhm,
I think that there is a phrase by, a little book by Joanna de Angelis called
mhm,
God's Child. And
mhm.
I really like it because she starts by saying we are all God's childs. So
Yeah,
therefore, we all inherit His work,
yeah.
His greatness, the universe, everything. So are we ready for our inheritance? And you're like, whoa, I might not feel that great. Thinking, I have all this to inherit. I am great. I am God's child, just like everybody else. I am
Uh-huh.
deserving of love. I am firstly and foremost deserving of my own self love.
Yes, and it's the hardest, I believe,
It is the
right?
hardest
And, and
because,
and why is that, right? And I think
mm,
the difficulty or the complexity of not really, going to that self-love, self-forgiveness, etc., is that it's easier to forgive the other because I can see in the other. I can see the expressions of, I don't know, one behavior, one thought, etc., etc. We can see it's very visible, but we are experts at hiding our own failures, our own difficulties. But deep inside, we know. So to be able to look at us when we somehow repress what we're feeling, repressing our shortcomings, our failures, um, then we need to be able to go through this self-discovery, this journey to self-discovery, and to be able to forgive it. I wanted to say something because you mentioned Joanna de Angelis phrase about that we all are God's children, but she also gives this really interesting image that true health is not something that we can just go outside of our own reality like we do by going to the pharmacy and right you mentioned that and pick up I want to do this painkiller or and this or that and boom you're healthy and when she says that it's really pinpointed to the fact that to be truly healthy, we need to go inside, deep inside, as you're mentioning, right? That the journey toward yourself that can help us achieve not so low self esteem, to achieve self love, self compassion, and in the end, a true sense of well being, right?
but Marcia, it's really important to take that, because it could be, let's
Uh
say we
huh.
have a disease, we have excellent treatment, we have the pills, we have the surgery,
Yeah.
whatever is
Yeah.
required, all good, done, we are okay. But if we have not changed ourselves inside, the irradiating thoughts that might have led to that disease, another one will come.
Yes, yes.
Another one
I
will
used
come.
to, yeah, I used to teach my in a very crude example, simplistic and crude example to my children on the same concept. And it was like this, right? You hate to brush your teeth and your parents go, honey, 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 you hate to brush your teeth. So you go through life and with poor dental hygiene, and at some point you get a cavity. And at some point, you go to the dentist, they fix it, and you go back home. And you should have learned your lesson, right? You should change your behavior regarding and your thought regarding dental hygiene, but you keep on the same behavior. You still will not brush your teeth as you should. And that little cavity becomes a root canal, and the more you go through life and not paying attention to what those symptoms are telling you, the worse is going to be the pain, all the way to when the pain is so hard that you may have I don't know, a terrible loss impact, and you're going to lose your tooth or lose your teeth because you decided not to hear
Mm.
your body, right?
Yeah, I think that is a perfect example. But we are like that because we take time to learn, and
Yes, yes,
we're stubborn and we're resistant
yes,
because
yes,
we think we
yes,
know best.
yeah,
And this is sometimes our problem when we think we know best. And the laws of nature are such that they will teach us and take as long as it takes. So it's our
yeah,
choice how many episodes we want to have of something before
yeah,
the penny drops, that you go,
yeah,
oops, hello,
yeah,
yeah. And of course, once you have that awareness, once you have, yeah, you realize what needs to be changed, and you decide that this is what you're going to do, you're
uh-huh.
halfway there.
Yes,
It's
yes,
having that awareness, that awakening, if you like, and that decision to say, okay, I'm going to change this. It's not going
mhm,
to change by magic. It's going to require some effort. And
yeah,
the only person who could do that effort is you yourself.
yeah, absolutely, love it, love it,
And you have to have self-compassion as well. Say, okay,
yeah,
this is I'm going to change a habit of maybe several lifetimes. Okay, I'm going to focus on it, and you just do your strategy. How are you going to do this, little by little, giving yourself a pat on the back, saying, well done, I've achieved a little bit, I've achieved a little bit. Slowly you get there. But rather than say, oh my gosh, I've always done this, it's too hard for me to change. Have you heard people say that?
oh,
This is how I am, I can't do
yeah.
it differently.
I'm
No,
too old to change, right? I'm too old to change, and
it's all
do
to
not tell
change.
me that I need to quote unquote brush my teeth now. And like, oh
And,
my,
and that is where we remember what Joanna's saying. We have all this hidden potential. We
yeah,
have so much more available to ourselves than we actually even realize.
yeah,
So when we make that decision and we start making the effort, things start happening.
yeah, yeah. I feel that the in the New Testament we hear Jesus talking about the parable of the talents, right? Which
Mm,
we can use it whatever you want to do, but for me specifically, it talks about the creativity, the opportunity, the possibility. We are the little seeds still, right?
mm,
Or maybe just start to grow this tiny, but we have the potential to become this amazing enormous tree with all the fruits of our transformation from a seed to a seedling to so on and so forth. And it's a concept that is really dear to me, because we have the free will to just shut down or hide away and do very little, especially, I'm afraid, this is my opinion here, and but in our generation, right, where we're so busy. We're so busy. There's so much expected from us in a material sense that we become very hard to be present, and consciously or not, we end up outsourcing, if you will, our care, our love, especially of our children, and you would do everything. The outsourcing of my love is, okay, I cannot be present, but I'm going to make sure that you get the best grades, whatever I can do I get to do your work or whatever, right? And by doing that, the child becomes unequipped to overcome their own problems, their own frustrations, their own issues, and subsequently they may end up with very, very low self esteem. So it's
yeah.
all related, right? All of those things come together. But let's talk a little bit about health itself. Do you have any stories or thoughts or examples that you can give it to us that can kind of uh, conclude, if you will, our thought
Yeah.
about attaining health esteem, right?
Yeah, when I was sort of reading up for this chat today, I was reminded of a young lady that I met quite a few years ago.
Uh-huh.
I'll change her name. So I met her when she was, I think, probably about 10 or 11.
Mhm.
So I'll call her Mary. So Mary, when she was born with a syndrome, a very unusual syndrome. And the doctors suggested to her mother and father when she was born that it's best let her die
Mm.
because her life would be miserable. But they did not want her to die. And funnily enough, on that day, there was somebody who had been to the USA and who had particularly learned about this syndrome and knew exactly what surgery she needed to save her life at the
Interesting.
day of birth.
Yeah. Hmm.
So the parents thought that this was like a sign from the heavens, if you like,
Yeah.
and they did the treatment. So this child, she was at the time when she was around 10 or 11, they made a documentary about her here on the
Oh,
TV in the
wow.
UK.
Oh,
Okay, she
wow.
won one of these, Child of Courage awards. They have here, like every year, children get these Child of Courage awards, and somebody nominated her, and she got one of these awards. So they made like a documentary. So in the documentary, it's really interesting. Although I knew her personally, it was really interesting to see the documentary. And the syndrome meant that she did not have normally formed hands. She was lacking her thumbs,
Hmm.
and in the hospital here, they done lots of corrective surgery. And what they did, and I hope this doesn't trigger anybody, but they amputated one of her fingers and implanted it in the place of the thumb so that she could have the pincer grip. Because
Yeah.
unless you've lost your pincer grip, you don't realize how important the
Yeah.
ability to hold things is. And the doctor, the surgeon, he's like a very famous surgeon. He sees all children with deformities, and like he knew her already for many years and done lots of surgery on her. And he said to the journalist, he said, "This child, Maria, when I start my consultations in the morning and I look at the list of patients I'm seeing that day, I have like 10 patients are coming to see me that day. I look down their names. He says, I know all my patients quite a lot. But when I come across and I can see Maria's on the list, he says, I smile. It's going to be a good day.
Oh,
He says, because my job is a hard job and I deal with very difficult situations. But Maria always cheers me up. This top surgeon is saying this.
yeah. Yeah.
And so then it shows her coming in for the consultation and she's all excited. So he's explaining to her what they're going to do with her hand. And they don't know if it's going to work, but they're going to try and give her a pincer grip. And she said, oh, I'm so excited. And, let's do this. I feel really positive. It's going to work. And he's going, I wish I had your optimism. He's like, typical doctor, like, I can't guarantee. She said, no, it's going
Yeah.
to be fine. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. And you say, what's the thing that you're most looking forward to when if you're able to do this? She said, to be able to blow dry my hair by myself.
Oh, oh,
What a girl thing to say, you know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah.
She couldn't hold a hair dryer in her hand the way they were, so she needed her sisters or her mom or somebody else to do it for her. So she was so looking forward to be able to dry her own hair and style it or whatever.
Yeah.
This person, anybody else, could be looking at all the impediments that she had because of her syndrome, but she was the healthiest of the lot. She cheered up the consultant doctor, the surgeon. She cheered up the journalist. She cheered up everybody
Yeah.
because she was that presence of
Yes.
real health. Although her body was not 100% healthy,
Yeah.
in this before, she was irradiating this great vibrancy and optimism, and she never let the impediments of her body stop her from doing anything.
Yeah.
She went on to university. Everywhere she used to get people to help her because she couldn't carry her books. So she'd always have two or three friends going behind carrying her books and things like that. And people wanted to help her, and she would say, "Yeah, I need some help because I can't do this."
Yeah.
It's fine. She didn't feel sorry or embarrassed or, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't carry my books." She said, "Can you carry them for me?" She
Yeah.
was such a. She would, like, whenever anybody met her, they were like, "Whoa." She was such a positive person. So that for me is showing that holistic health in this child that has a body that is
Yeah.
cracked, let's say,
Yeah.
that's not full, that's not complete, it has deficiencies, but that she does not let that be a barrier to her living a full life. And I think it's just such a good example, how
Yeah.
she affected positively all those people around her.
Yeah. And part of me keeps thinking maybe that spirit ready to incarnate, ready to accept the next challenges from the evolving spirit perspective, was somehow aware of I could have died. It was perfectly legal and acceptable in this context to for the mom to have an abortion and terminate the pregnancy. So maybe there was that internal from within this zest for life, the zest for doing and overcoming her challenges and seeing like a challenge, just like a somebody who's going to go to the Everest, right? Which is like impossible to do, but they do it. They sign up, they prepare, they spend a year or two or more getting ready to overcome the challenge of the mountain. But one of the things that I want to just perhaps echo some words from Joanna de Angelis is that, right, it depends on each one of us to choose how to deal with either scarcity or to deal with a like this woman with a life lesson and yet still attain balance and attain a sense of joy like you said. And when we talk about total health, um, if we are psychologically able to deal right, that challenge is transformed into an emotional, that emotional wealth that we're talking earlier, to be able to fulfill whatever you need to go through, even if it means pain, right, physical pain, even if it means being unable to dry your own hair, but it's the sense of I'm here and yet I'm emotionally wealthy. I can deal with everything that comes to me in a positive manner. So this is awesome. Thank you, Anne. Do you want to maybe wrap up with some final
Yeah,
thoughts to everyone?
I just think that from a spiritual perspective as well, it's just to remind ourselves that this body has an expiry date. This body that
Yes,
each one of us has today
true, true.
has, has an expiry date, but our soul is eternal.
Yes,
And that this body is offering us today the best possibilities, exactly what we need today. So rather than thinking, I wish I had a different body, I wish I had a different situation, is saying, what is this body? What is this situation coming to teach me now? Because this is the lesson
yeah,
that I have now to carry into eternity.
yes,
And then it changes it completely rather than seeing like something a cruelty, let's say bad luck, or all these kind of negative things that we can think like an injustice and why me, and thinking, no, this has come to me because there is something I have to learn from this, that which I can learn. And even if the body becomes diseased, which sometimes it may well
yeah,
be,
yeah,
the spirit will be healed because
yes,
we've gone through that learning, that process. And maybe that was what the lesson the body was facilitating for us. So we need to just start to think about thinking in a much wider way from
yes.
a spiritual perspective, with attention to this body, to the details that we need for every day. But for our health is much more than how the body presents.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Anne. Those are beautiful words. I want to thank you, everyone who's here with us. As I said before, thank you. Send us your questions, your thoughts. If anything sparked your imagination or something came deep in touch with your heart. I usually get that when I talk to Anne. Let us know, right, Anne? But with that, I just want to say thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week in our next episode. Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.